Great. Jessica. You're good to go.
Okay, so welcome all to the July meeting. Do we have anyone online?
Kathleen's joining us online and we've got Andrew Mackey as an online attendee.
So we'll just do a quick roll call.
Sure, I'll start in the room. Bennett,
Here.
Jessica.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Pete,
Here.
Marla. Here. And online Kathleen.
Here.
Are you muted? We couldn't hear you.
Here? I said
Your volume up, maybe. My volume's up as high as it goes.
sorry. Here?
Oh, I heard it.
I heard it
Very,
very
very
light.
Hold on, let me
Yeah.
see. I know, right?
Also sounds like it far.
Yeah, it sounded like it came out of.
I'm not even in the meeting. It's not me this time.
Wait, let's try this.
I can read this.
Kathleen, can you talk again?
Yes, I'm here.
I woke up.
Thank you. It was me that, for some reason is being finicky tonight. So, thank you.
Okay, I want to begin our time together with an acknowledgement honoring all Indigenous people, the people who came here before us and nurtured this place as stewards of Mother Earth, the first people. I make this acknowledgement aware that this land is unceded and the issues of water and territorial rights and encroachment upon sacred sites are ongoing in the Wabanaki homeland. I acknowledge the Oskawaga people who once lived in what is now Scarborough, and that as we support efforts for land and water protection, we honor the current tribes who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. Next up, minutes.
Is there a motion?
I will make a motion to accept the minutes from our May or June meeting. I'll second.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
All right. We'll roll call then. Abel.
Here.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you. Bennett.
Do I get to vote?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I always miss that.
That's all right.
It's you're an alternate. Jessica.
Yes.
Pete.
Yes.
Marla.
Yes.
Kathleen.
Yes. And my
Ingrid.
cat says yes, too.
Thank you.
So real quick review of the agenda. We have some old business, which are the environmental standards, update on the Parks and Conservation Land Board on the land bond. And do we have any planning board studies? I didn't see any.
There was nothing that was relevant to the Conservation Commission. So we didn't know for sure until Monday.
We didn't get the submittals this month until Monday, and I can talk to you about, we do have 3 public hearings that may be of interest, but I can talk to you.
Okay, so we'll keep it on the agenda then. And then we'll have updates from promoting citizen stewardship, town council, and the sustainability committee. But right now I want to, are there any changes or?
I just want to
Additions?
quickly put in a plug for tomorrow night's open space workshop. And Maggie's joining us online. Hi, Maggie. It's the big public engagement opportunity for the open space plan. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. at Public Safety Building. Hope everyone will come. If childcare is a barrier, there will be kids activities. We'll keep your kids busy while you participate. And then the Open Space Committee is also doing other community engagement events throughout the summer, including we've done 2 concerts in the park. They'll be at Summerfest and an upcoming farmers market also.
Is it a 2-hour event or?
It is a 2-hour event. If you kind of don't want to see the outcome, the last half hour will be kind of going over the participants' feedback. So technically you could probably leave at 7:30 if you don't want to see kind of the report out. But yeah, it isn't a rolling thing. It's a structured event.
But there are activities.
Yes, yeah. It's very, very interactive, hands-on.
It's not just listening to somebody talk.
Yeah, no.
So.
You'll be up and moving around and providing input, and everybody's going to be given $200,000 to decide how they want to spend that on conservation. That's one of the activities.
Big dollars, I guess.
Consulting group that will be running.
By
Yes.
1/3 of the house.
Yeah.
Definitely go. I'm 200.
Yeah.
All right, so hopefully we'll see everyone there.
Yes,
I thought there was a meeting. At the public safety building? Oh, this one's tomorrow.
Which one are you looking for?
Which meeting? Yeah, this one. That's tomorrow. Oh, it's tomorrow, 6 to 8.
you're early.
I don't think it's tomorrow though.
Thank you.
Are we expecting a good turnout for that?
Yes, we are expecting good.
So many people.
Looks like it.
$200,000 gets people out.
Yeah, monopoly money goes a long way, so.
We're really hopeful. I think Jamie has done an amazing job and Allison has done an amazing job.
And I know
We've
that
been-
staff has emailed like all the other committees,
Yeah.
and I've seen all the committees have been
Yeah.
emailed that have anything to
Yep.
do with anything. So I'm hoping. Big turnout.
I think it's supposed to be rainy, so maybe people will come
That's
to
also
us
good.
instead of concerts in the
Yeah,
park.
Yeah, that's good.
If it rains, I'll be here.
Okay,
I have a Frisbee game otherwise that I'm committed to.
I mean, I understand it's a
Alright.
priority.
Enjoying open space, you know?
You are enjoying the open space. I guess that's fair.
So any other thoughts on the open space meeting or additions? I'd like to open it up to public comment as we have folks in person and online.
Do you want to do online or in person first?
I want to do it in person
Okay.
first.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jamie Willie. I actually live in Portland. And I'm here kind of finishing a little roundabout I've done. So in Portland, I live in the 3rd district, which is where the Stroudwater Dam is. And about a year and a half ago, I just expressed some interest to the baykeeper and she said, hey, this is a couple months later, we're actually going to talk about it in the Sustainability Transportation committee meeting. So it was a nice chat. A couple councils interested in looking at the dam access. So I don't know if anybody knows what's happening in Millbrook up on the Presumpscot, Alewife runs, good stuff. And so anyway, I thought, well, it was more to me about the expense of not a fisherman so much, but why is there a plug in the river? What's the sense of it all? And so it was a good, that's recorded, you know, it was April of last year, some energy behind it, and then it kind of drifted. And that's what happens with 150-year-old things. Okay, so long story short, is it came around this year and, you know, you kind of hate to think something goes to sleep. And so before the Alewife runs and stuff, I'll put the breadcrumbs out. I've been to a couple other of your colleagues, or the conservation commissions for a couple of the towns. So this same thing I've mentioned to folks. And my comment to Portland, so my comment to my district councilor, it's you know, it's our dam to deal with, okay? And it's kind of set in the background, you know, but why I'm here tonight is I saw an article about Silver Brook, yes. And you are connected to Casco Bay. And people can forget that. So the Stroudwater goes up and there's a branch. And so I guess most of it is between 25 and was it up in Gorham? But most of the Stroudwater is along that stretch. And then there's a branch that goes down between Burnham Road and it's the west part of town. Who knew? You know, and I saw the map, I was like, Silver Brook, no, I want to come and just do my little thing here. So the plug in the river is the dam. There is money out there to take plugs in the river out right now. Okay, the estuary project, I've chatted with some other folks. I'm not gonna say anybody's advocating or not. It's just, but there's Friends of Casco Bay, definitely interested. Friends of the Presumpscot are interested. And so, if you've seen the vitality that can come back to these small streams, I have no idea if it's gonna come this far up, you know, to your small brook up here as part of this, but you are connected to Casco Bay. And my message to my counselor, who's on the sustainability committee meeting, will be, if you're gonna spend some money on this dam, I hope you have a public hearing about it. And I hope there's some basis for it. So here's the soundbite for you. I may not say this necessarily in Portland, but it's Portland's dam, but it's your habitat.
Where's the dam?
Okay, so you see it all the time. So when you go to the airport and you look down and you see they're being recorded.
We are being recorded, yes.
Well, I won't say it out loud, then the duck pond there, so the impoundment's right there. Maybe I will say it. It's a little bit of a duck poop pond. Okay? Water quality has been said is not good behind that dam. Okay? And I say, the Starwater folks have had a lot of issues, the airport, traffic, I know they do like the dam. It's great, but again, there's no power generation, it's been kind of a stop in the river. So you see it, it's right on Garrison Street, so it's kind of a pretty thing until you see a storm event. You see the brown water go through, well, the brown water won't stop. But you pull the dam out and the vitality starts, the mixing, so the impoundment, what little I know about this, the impoundment runs almost all the way back to Westbrook. There's a big slug of water there every time it rains, especially this time of year, it's pushed out. And so my other thing is not only about the habitat, but about the Fall River is the most impacted river in the state. And it's an industrial place, right? So there's gonna be some of that. But if you could pull that out, have better water mixing. So anyway, long story short is that your other conservation commissions that are in this area, I've done this basic thing to them. And it isn't, and I was told by the river folks, it isn't one person's thing. It should be a community of people, actually led by some others, not me. But to just say to Portland, simply keep going. That's the positive message is, don't let it go off. And taking dams out, pieces together. There's people putting these puzzles together. They're doing it out there. So, I'm Jamie Willie, I live in Portland. Thank you, Ruby, for not speaking up too much. And again, this is just about hopefully something not going to sleep. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. So, okay, I think I found it. I need to see these things. That's right here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stanis Roberts. I live at 38 County Road in North Scarborough, and thank you for all the wonderful work that you're doing around conservation here in this town. I'm here to talk about the Gorham Connector, which I'm sure you probably heard. It's a proposed turnpike that would be going from exit 45 by Target by the main mall to the South Street roundabout in Gorham. And I can talk a lot about this, so cut me off when the time comes, but to give you a quick background, I printed out a few things. The issue that we're trying to solve is congestion in North Scarborough on 114-22. Here's a map of the area, and you have 114 coming up, so I'm bad at public speaking, my handshake. But you have 22 coming through here from Congress Street. You have 114 coming from the main mall. And then you have what we call the overlap, where the two routes combine in North Scarborough and South Gorham. And that creates a bottleneck. So you have traffic in the morning that's going east, commuter traffic, that backs up on either side on this end. And then headed west in the afternoon, you have traffic backing up on this side of the overlap. It's been particularly bad the past month, and if you live there, you'll know there's some construction going on, but it's good news. We're going to have adaptive streetlights on stoplights on the Scarborough side, which should help things to some extent. But anyway, the issue just has to do with this less than a mile stretch. 114, for example, right here by Nonsuch Golf Course has an AADT, which is average annual traffic count. Average annual daily traffic, which is the average count of the traffic each day, of about 11,360 according to 2022 studies. To give some comparison, Black Point Road, which you're all probably familiar with, where it converges with Highland, is about 12,000, and Black Point Road even further up is around 16,000, where it's close to Route 1. So That's a comparison and why 114 alone is the issue. 22 is even less, it's about 8,500 AADT, where Smiling Hill Farm is. So the two routes are fine on their own. You would think by capacity, it's this one stretch that needs to be fixed. This is a close-up of that stretch. Right here, we have 3 intersections that are problem intersections that create that bottleneck, and then this stretch, which probably needs a little bit more capacity. The issue that we have is that back in 2005, 2006, the Maine Turnpike Authority, not really clear why, was made the lead agency for solving congestion in Greater Bourne. At the time, MDOT took the York County area and the Maine Turnpike was given this area. And the Maine Turnpike can only do one thing. They can only build a turnpike. And so since then, there's been no real consideration of how to try to improve the existing roads and fix congestion that way instead of building this turnpike. The Turnpike Authority presented this as an alternative to the town council and showed what appears to be a very problematic existing road solution where you have multiple houses on either side being impacted. But what this is showing is if you were to turn that overlap stretch into basically 295 with a 76-foot roadway and a real 4-lane road, you can fit within 60 feet. 11-foot wide sections of lane are common now. And so 4 lanes would be 44 feet wide. And even if you have, what would be great, a 5 or 6 foot shoulder on either side so that we can have bike and ped mobility, you're still under 60 feet. There's a 66-foot right of way through the stretch. So if at the same time you were to expand that stretch, you could also bury your utility lines. We have wide ditches on either side, so you can incorporate your stormwater flow into the road and minimize that impact that there might be within that right of way, but you wouldn't have to expand past the right of way. That's not just something that seems like common sense that we want to try to fix our existing roads first before such a major construction project as a turnpike, but it's actually law. Maine Sensible Transportation Act specifically states transportation policy is the policy of the state that transportation planning decisions, capital investment decisions, and project decisions must. It goes through a few things, but B, require that the full range of reasonable transportation alternatives be evaluated for all significant highway construction or reconstruction projects and give preference to transportation system management options, demand management strategies, improvements to the existing system and other transportation modes before increasing highway capacity through road building activities. The turnpike isn't even that effective. There's been mixed data that they've put out, but a very revealing piece of data here that was done through their land use study that they commissioned through the University of Maryland showed that if the turnpike was built, when you factor in toll bias, when you factor in the fact that they're also impacting the existing roads by putting multiple intersections to build this highway, you only have an average time savings of that this map shows. For the darkest blue is an average time savings during your rush hour commute of 4 minutes, and that's for West Gorham and Standish and a little tiny piece of Buxton. Rest of Buxton is 1 to 3 minutes, and then everywhere else, as you can see, is not impacted at all. So the idea that this turnpike, which would be well over $250 million to build and has significant environmental impacts, which I won't go into, so I don't take too much time, but I have for you guys to review. We really do not feel is the best possible solution, that there's a better way of doing this and that can avoid all that environmental damage and impacts to the property owners. I'm one of the property owners that would be impacted. I would be about a dozen homes that they'd be bulldozing through my next door neighbors and a lot of really, really valuable and important wetland and it would be paving right over Red Brook, the this is Red Brook on my property right here. Where the interchange would be going, right across from Smelling Hill Farm. And, as a, just wanting to put the money where my mouth is. If this turnpike doesn't go through, I would like to donate this land in Red Brook, to the land trust and, or to the town, for permanent conservation. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, please email me, or reach out. Oh, the other thing is that South Portland Conservation Commission issued a recommendation to the South Portland Town Council to remove their support from this turnpike project. And I asked that if the Scarborough Conservation Commission would be interested in considering that. And reviewing the information that might be a really good place to start. So, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Have you presented to transportation committee yet?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
Yeah,
maybe I wasn't at that one. Maybe I missed it.
it was about a month ago.
Okay, was it the same presentation?
No, it's probably
Presentation has
very
become more and more compelling.
Thanks.
The further along.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just happy.
It was probably, it's definitely grown and changed, and I could literally talk for an hour about it and go into find parts of the data, but thank you very much. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
thank you very much.
Well, just a question I have about that. The town council really has no ability to stop this on their own, other than give a recommendation to MTA that they don't like it, right? And that's, I mean, true for every town around here. We don't have, there's no real authority other than coming from maybe the state legislature that could make a difference to change that. Is that correct? We could come out, we could give our opinions, but we can't, there's no legal.
The Turnpike Authority is not required to follow the requests of the town.
But they have publicly said if the towns remove their support, you know, what are they building it for? So.
Yeah, I mean, the letter, that's in the notes, the MOA, that has all the town managers' signatures. From 2022. So is that agreement something that would be potentially rescinded? Is that the idea?
I can speak to this now if you want. It's not on the agenda. I'm looking to Jessica.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure we didn't have another
Yeah.
public comment before we,
Yeah, I don't.
Sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack.
and I'm looking at Jamie because I'm,
Yeah,
See if there's
I
any
gave
public comment.
Andrew permission to talk, so if we want to let him do public comment, then you can decide, the commission can decide how to move forward with the agenda.
Nothing for me.
Thanks, Andrew. Have a great night.
yeah, folks, I mean, we was thinking, can we put this as item number, well, we have someone here if we want to ask questions. Yeah, why don't we?
Or do you want to do your town council update now?
So that,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
part of my update. I could do that now. If you want.
Yeah, I just want to be respectful of time.
Yeah.
Having sat in the audience.
Yeah,
I want
right.
to be respectful of time.
Well, thanks, Shannon, for coming. Your Autumn is right. You're getting really good with the information that you're providing. Stannis was actually the one who provided the South Portland Conservation Commission memo to me or told me about it. And so this committee actually already has it.
Oh, great.
I actually was asking for them for this meeting to come in a position. And we have now decided, so I can tell you town council, and I've talked to another counselor, and we are requesting the Conservation Commission to relook now that the route has been established to come out with an opinion. So after talking to like staff and the fact that the MTA has had such a delay, what the recommendations that I've been given from the experts is we should really let the public process come out. So we haven't even had the public hearing for Scarborough yet. So it might be a little preemptive for us to come out with an opinion.
Portland had their public meeting?
No, so, and then, so Jamie maybe can elaborate more on this, but my understanding was the reason that South Portland came out with a memo in opposition was because they have a climate action plan that they could specifically reference that this plan was in opposition to, where we don't have that. So what we do have though is, we have the public process coming up. And so I think after that, I've asked the commission to similarly relook at now that they've established the route and come out with their opinion. Correct, council doesn't have a say, but I think if you have multiple communities now coming out and saying, now that you've established the route, we're rescinding our support. And Stannis, what you don't know is at the last meeting, I did bring this up again, and I referenced specifically what Pete just referenced was the memorandum where they specifically said that we were going to do our best to preserve Red Brook. And that's the highlight. And I know you're familiar that we are questioning is we're saying you've now come out with your plan. And I personally do not think that they've done the best job that they can to protect Red Brook. You guys are the experts, so I'm hoping, I'm not sure when it's going to be rescheduled, the public hearing. I think procedurally it does make sense because Scarborough's being impacted so much, and I don't know how much South Portland is as much.
South Portland isn't impacted other than about 100.
Correct. And so I think that's where we do feel we do want to go through the whole process and at least follow their timeline of that. My understanding is they're not pulling any permits. They're not jumping the gun. They're going to follow with the public hearing process. I can tell you councilors are already talking about this. I've already received a draft memo about this. So it's on our radar. I have already asked this commission. I'm being told to chill out a little bit, follow the process by the experts.
Put a quick plug in.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really important, given that the MTA is internally reviewing this, for there to be a third-party review as well. So not necessarily a motion calling for opposition to it, but that there be a third-party review. And we have the perfect organization to do that in JPCOG and PATS. PATS is an organization that looks at transportation issues and makes recommendations, and they have not been involved in this process up until now. So an ask would be that PATS do a third-party review of the alternative roadway solutions that I just mentioned. And also that there be an environmental impact statement study. All federally funded infrastructure projects require that there be, during the public input period, a very thorough environmental impact study done so that the public can see all the environmental impacts that the project might have. And because the MTA has a corporate structure and it's not a federally funded project, they do not have to do that, but that is just such good due diligence to be done. And so that could be a request, so we could know what exactly we do have to be concerned about environmentally.
Karen, I have a question. Is the council going to ask other committees to weigh in on this? I could see like transportation and
That's
sustainability and
where
long-range planning also.
I've just been looking to my committees. I think it would be useful to probably have other committees look at it. Yeah, I think there's multiple issues, the environmental impact, the traffic counts. I mean, we've consistently heard that it's just leveled off and it's not really there what they were expecting or what they think it was going to be. So what Transportation Commission with sustainability, I mean, I always question what's worse, sitting in traffic for 4 minutes or building a 4-lane highway. So I don't know if that's like an issue sustainability could address. I mean, I think the more people that address it, the better. I mean, again, council needs guidance. So I have an opinion about this, but it would be great to have some facts behind that opinion.
Yeah, so my questions are process, timing, and coordinating with other relevant committees and boards. And so process is big picture. If we were to follow a similar model to South Portland, the Conservation Commission could provide a recommendation to town council, who is then going to
make the ultimate decision of whether to keep their endorsement in place or.
okay, so it's endorsement, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, and then, sorry, so the town council would pass a resolution related to their endorsement or retraction of their endorsement. But none of that's happening until after the Scarborough public hearing. There are multiple public hearings.
I don't know.
I thought they were,
There's no schedule in place.
We
yet.
don't have it scheduled yet.
oh, no, I meant, it's not just one meeting.
Right.
There are a series of meetings. Scarborough is getting one of those meetings, and there was a July,
We were gonna have a
Window.
July 18th
Yeah.
meeting, I believe, and then that got canceled, and then there's been some change in leadership, so now I'm thinking it probably won't end up until like September. But then, I mean, just my 2 cents, if we did have that town meeting in September, that would be an appropriate time to ask all of the committees
Right.
to weigh in, because the information would be out there. Here, you all attend these meetings, hear it, listen, and then long-range planning could certainly weigh in, because it really affects zoning and future land use in that area.
I will tell you that
But-
Jean Marie Caterina has informed me that PAX and GPCOG have been involved since 1998 or
Yeah.
1988.
I'm seeing that in the
So I
memo.
think that's maybe something,
So
We
they haven't
could-
been involved in the term.
I know, so I've done the council, I mean, the committee, but, so that might be something that you could look into.
Angela's a member of PAX and she has her hand up, so.
That's exactly what I was, I heard the public comment about PAX is, when I first started, I would say, in 2015, one of my very first meetings was at the North Scarborough Grange Hall, where we did a public meeting and presentation, which was a PAX-led study, for the region around what are the alternatives or how we could, expand, say, the existing roadway network and what that neighborhood wanted. And I can totally appreciate that in the past 2 decades, maybe public comments are changing, or maybe that opinion has changed, but it was very clear through the PAC study and the public comment that came out of that study that the neighborhood out there did not want like a 5-lane section of road like we have on Route 1 to kind of change the character of their neighborhood. And that was very loud and clear. And to the point, that might have changed. And so it's good to kind of go back through a public process and see what that means. But PAX has definitely been a part of this process since, again, the late 80s, since this first idea started. So they would be good to kind of do a review because they have been part of the process too, and heard all of those comments.
I just have one, couple quick comments, in relation to this MOA, which was signed. I question a couple of the findings. Number one, I question the Red Brook finding. I also question that a Gorham connector will reduce greenhouse gas emissions as called for in the 2020 Maine Won't Wait 4-year climate action plan. I would like to see where they came up with those numbers, because that does not make sense to me that it would do so. So there's just one other thing I think the way we should look at. So that's on page 2 of 4. The bottom of the page, and then the municipalities agreed, and then so the specific language around Red Brook is number 5. So I have a question, a couple of findings. One of the findings of the document, and then also whether or not number 5 is being met.
any other discussion? So to reiterate, the process is really to wait until the public hearing is scheduled, get all the information from that public hearing, and then add it to the Conservation Commission agenda following that meeting. It's premature at this point.
That's good. If you think so, I have mixed feelings. I think the route is established. I don't know what a public hearing is gonna influence your environmental considerations of the route or not. I personally would prefer something sooner rather than later. I understand there's a process, but I specifically feel like what this commission does, doesn't matter what a public hearing does, it's all opinion. You guys have the facts of what the Red Brook is, what this route does, what it does to it. That's sort of how I feel. I know it's, because we don't meet for another month, and then we don't meet till September, and I'm being pressured, and I have a document in my thing that someone wants me to sign for August, and I'm like, that's, and so I think I can talk to my counselors about that as well.
I think clearer guidance would be helpful.
I thought that's what you said you wanted them to do, was to wait.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Well, so the conversation Jamie and I had was, we're saying maybe we should let the public process play out. There's no public process currently scheduled.
Right.
Yet there's continuous conversation. And I appreciate people constantly showing up and reminding us that this is not going away, and they are still doing work all day about this. And so I just concerned that all of our committees are busy. They have a lot on their agendas. I would prefer to maybe have a discussion about this. Maybe we don't have to do a demo right away, but a sense. I don't know.
One other quick note, I read through the South Portland Conservation Commission memo. They do not mention specifically their climate action plan. They just mention climate change. So that they have concerns about the impacts of this project as it relates to climate change, but they don't reference their climate action plan. So I don't necessarily think that we don't have one weakens the town of Scarborough's ability to say something as it relates to climate change, because Scarborough is also concerned about it.
Yep. I would say it's only me and one other counselor at this point who are really interested in coming out, so I would like to regroup with them, and then before we make an agenda for August. Get back to you.
But to be fair, in August, you might have a public hearing date too.
And that's-
because that might be helpful.
Right, yep. We'll see.
I mean, I guess I have a concern, say we're recommending an EIS, an environmental impact study. And then they go to the meeting, they say, we're doing an environmental impact study, and then it's like, oh, we've
But
addressed.
if you recommend it and they're not doing it, we could say, we have a recommendation coming out of the Conservation Commission to do this out of Scarborough. Why aren't you doing it? They're recommending it. So this is where I like to have all the meat before. I'm a little bit different when it comes to that. I'm not sure, I guess personally, what a public hearing would do, besides we're gonna hear from people who are very unhappy about traffic or the environmental effects.
Angela has her hand up.
I keep going up and down a little bit there. I guess just to play devil's advocate, I think also it would be helpful for MTA to kind of lay out for you guys specifically, and like Pete just laid out, here's some specific information we would like to vet and know where it came from and how you calculated it. I think MTA can provide all that information, and to that point, it might actually stem further conversation to talk through, okay, your wetland impacts are blank, and here's your alternative analysis. Have you guys looked at this, that, or the other thing? Like, to actually kind of base your comments on more kind of concrete items, you know what I mean? Like, how is it impacting Red Brook? How is it impacting your total wetland impacts, or even those habitat areas that you guys can kind of really drill into, that right now your comments are going to be high level, which might be a good first step, but you probably would want a second step anyway, because I feel like even with staff's help kind of reviewing it, we're going to have some comments or recommendations, or like I said, further study needed, things like that. So whether or not you do one today, I think you're still going to need to do this follow-up, because I think it would be good to base it on some really hard facts, and you might have a better product in the end if this moves forward, if it's based on those type of things.
Could we, as an interim step, do an information request rather than a recommendation? I think that feels like where we're at is a request for information.
I think that's great. I mean, you just identified a couple things that you're concerned over that I think.
Yeah,
And that's totally appropriate, because in light of the recent cancellation of the Scarborough public hearing, we would like some,
Yeah.
that's a good spot.
So it's not, we're not discussing a recommendation. It's premature. We need some additional.
We need the information
We need
to
the
be able to make the recommendations.
Yes.
I just wanted to comment that if it's the Maine Turnpike Authority that only builds turnpikes, and there's a possibility of an alternate, who is gonna be investigating the alternate? paths forward,
Well, I think that's a question we ask in information.
because they're
request.
not gonna do that. Right?
How are alternate routes being considered and evaluated?
Exactly, so we can compare what we have here and at least two other alternate options, right?
And they also haven't provided, so, I mean, if you recall, I think the Conservation Commission a year ago, 2 years ago, was asked for what are your a representative from a consultant
The
for
mitigation.
MTA came in and said, what are your priorities in terms of parcels for conservation? And I think that list was provided, but we never heard anything since, so like, if they're gonna be providing statistics on like acres of forested land impacted, acres of wetland, how much impact, I question that carbon monoxide and greenhouse gas emissions statement, and also impacted by brook. But at the converse to that, it would be good to know, like, okay, for mitigation, based on your current proposal, where do you stand on that?
Mhm.
What are you preserving? What are you conserving? What are you, how are you making up?
What are you
Because
restoring?
what do you, and that will help us at least weigh some of those things. In terms of pluses and minuses, instead of all minuses. You know,
And Maggie has her hand up online.
Yeah, just to follow up on what Marla was asking. And who makes the decision? How is the decision made about who is in charge of this? So, I mean, does that come from the state? Or who makes the decision about who, if not the MTA, then who? I think of that as a process question.
That's
We'll
my
find out
question
the
too.
So there,
Will we end up making recommendations about some entity that would take this forward, or?
I think potentially, I think we need more information before we can make any kind of recommendation. I mean, in my mind, it would most likely be DOT as opposed to MTA that is going to explore alternatives. But that's just speculation at this point.
So, I mean, right, and do we think more broadly than roads? So, I mean, is this a time to think more broadly than more cars? I don't know. Just a thought.
We have Jean Marie Katerina joining us online also, so she has her hand up.
Sorry, I didn't mean, I wasn't gonna get involved. Anyway, I've been involved with this since 1988. Okay, I was on the GP cog, the PAX thing in full, just to make sure you understand, I live on 114. I'm just below where the traffic backs up on a daily basis and has been for 20 years. And it's not just the congestion, it's the volume of traffic. I've also been involved with the MTA, and have talked directly with Chairman Mills. I've attended a couple of their meetings. And one of the things that I think it's great, I like the idea of Angela's, let's go back to GP cog and PAX and say, hey, what have you got? What is it else that should be happening? But in essence, what I want to say is that this process that's been started by the MTA is not like they're going to rubber stamp something tomorrow. That isn't how it works. What they're doing is they've done their preliminary, where they think the path will be, but they still have to get all sorts of permitting and permission from the Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Environmental Protection, and whoever else. So, yeah, the fact that it's been delayed is because their chairperson, Mills, Peter Mills, is retiring as part of it. And I know Maggie just asked the question about, have they looked at alternative transportation and whatnot? And yes, that's been part of it since day one. The problem with Maine is that we don't have the population to qualify for, i.e., for lack of a better word, light rail, not that I want to see that. Buses are lovely, but I don't know how many of you have spent much time west of Gorham. That's gonna be part of my new district when I become county commissioner. But I don't know anybody in their pickup trucks west of Gorham, and I know I sound a little bit pejorative here, and maybe, but that being said, who's gonna drive 3 or 4 miles to get to a bus stop to take a bus into Portland? So there's still some things there, but I absolutely let's look at it with fresh eyes. And see what can happen. But as a constituent, as a person who lives in the impacted area, it's a nightmare. And it's not just during commuting hours, it's all day, every day, where there's a lot of traffic. And I would like also Angela to see if she can get us some updated DOT numbers on traffic counts. Not just for 114, but also Beach Ridge Road's been impacted, Holmes Road is impacted, Broad Turn Road has been impacted. So, let's put the whole picture together. I don't want anyone to have a heart attack or panic yet. And I do know the reason why the MTA ended up with it is because the MTA has money and nobody else did, at least back in the day. And it was Representative Andrew McLean, who was my rep at the time. And I think he was chair of transportation at the time. And he lived in Gorham. He was like, we got to do something. So that's how MTA ended up with it. So anyway, I'm going to shut up and let you guys do your meeting. But then I'm going to continue to spy on you. No, I didn't say that. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And Andrew has had his hand up for a while and Angela has too, so I'm not sure who you want to go to first.
Well, Andrew, I'm sorry, but Angela was specifically mentioned, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna let her respond. But if we can sort of wrap it up for this meeting, because we do have other items on the agenda.
Yeah.
And it's.
I will be super brief. I just wanted to tie together what Maggie kind of I think was asking, and what Counselor Katarina mentioned was, so DOT really has no interest or ability right now to kind of invest a lot of money into this area. And so what they have done instead is they are partnering with this process and doing a transit study as well as a separate active transportation study. So they're looking at how Maggie talked about is kind of zooming out, bigger picture. How do you get cars and the volumes off the road? So that's DOT's portion of it. They're putting more of like planning and study money towards how we can incorporate things into this east-west bypass and do it in a better way to that respect. So that's where I would say DOT is already in the middle of it, but looking at it from a different vantage point, right? From the planning study piece of it. So I just wanted to throw that out there but they do not have in any of their work plans, any capital investment money to kind of invest in the infrastructure out here. So I just want to make that point.
That's even after all the BIL funds and everything that DOT got and IRL funds.
Correct. Not in their plan.
If it's not in the work plan, it doesn't get the funding.
They did send out letters to the area about doing survey work. And so I think that kind of stirred people up a little bit out in that area, North Scarborough. Talking with DOT, it's again a planning study to look at how the roads were built. So it's like taking the existing lanes and replacing the gravel underneath and making those more stable and drainage. It doesn't have anything to do with the capacity of the corridors themselves. It's more about the structural integrity of the road. And so that I think is confusing people a little bit out there, thinking DOT is coming in and kind of solve the problem, but that's not their intention with this. That's the federal funds they received. They're rather use it towards what they're calling unbuilt roads and trying to find ways to to make the roads more structurally sound, not expanding them.
Andrew still have his.
Andrew put his hand down, so.
Okay. Okay,
I have one very quick thing, just for information purposes, I would like to know what the process is for oversight of the MTA. Like, is that the governor's office? Is there a board? that
There's a
oversees-
board.
A board, okay. So that we could, theoretically, a letter could go there for recommendation.
okay, so moving on to old business, the environmental standards, I don't know if folks wanna, I'm looking at Jamie and Autumn, give us some background and discuss the process moving forward.
Sure, so we have a roundtable meeting set up before your next meeting, with a couple of members. And then we've invited specifically some engineers that represented the development community that attended the SEDCO forum. And we're hoping just to have an opportunity to come together. I have a draft agenda. I did want to brainstorm with you all about how you envision that meeting going. I have it basically introductions, the Conservation Commission, and developer representatives and staff. And then a background where we are and sort of a purpose statement for this meeting. I'll facilitate it. I'll just be kind of middle person and just make sure everyone behaves well. And I think it'll be a well-attended and appropriate discussion. I think it'll be fine. But then having conservation, something maybe for you all to consider, Conservation Commission purpose for creating these standards, your opening remarks, if you will. And then staff will do a synopsis of the concerns we heard from the developers at the developer forum. And then the engineers that are there can maybe have their opening statements. And then I think how I'm envisioning it is after we sort of, this is who we're representing, and this is what we'd like to see, and this is their what they'd like to see, just going through the ordinance a little piece at a time and sort of having the open dialogue and hearing both sides. And so starting with applicability, I think that one could be an important thing to understand. Applicability is always something that can have further discussion. And then moving into the hot one, I think Jamie and I both agree is the wetland buffers. And so then moving into that, and then marsh migration. And the purpose of this meeting is not to come up with some big answer or we'll give up this, you give up that. I think it's more just to have this dialogue in a different format. We'll also have one of our engineers that we've invited works for developers, but also does peer review for us. And so it's a really good balance, I think, from a professional perspective, but is going to bring an environmental scientist that works for the development community as well. So we'll have some pretty good attendees.
We have an environmental scientist that's coming.
Yeah,
You're gonna come?
I know, but I'm not an environmental
Not
scientist.
Scientist. I think the environmental scientist that's attending has done reviews for us as well, so I think it'd be pretty.
Well, and
Oh, and we also have invited
Robin
Robin
Saunders,
Saunders from Long
yeah.
Range Planning. So she'll be in attendance. And then we have invited Counselor Katarina and Counselor Anderson. So I think it'll be a pretty good group. I think once we go through the specifics and then we'll say, okay, what we've heard, or here are some opportunities for some further discussion, maybe to find a compromise. And then we can discuss next steps. The ordinance committee has asked us to come back in September to give them an update. I don't suspect we'll have a update that includes we're all kumbaya and holding hands ordinance, but we can at least give them how that meeting went and next steps and get some further guidance. That's what I have right now for how it could go.
Is there an opportunity to provide materials in advance? I think one of the things we've talked about from the beginning is the documentation related to our recommendations, that these are but documentation in terms of science and peer communities. So I'm just gonna go on a limb and say that they're not diving deeply into the scientific literature, and unless
Sure.
they work in those communities, they probably don't know the nitty-gritty of the environmental standards of peer communities. And so having that information available as to how we arrived at those would be helpful, but if there's no opportunity.
I'm not considering anything unless there's substantial backing behind it. So you guys have come forward with recommendations with science behind it. I don't know what this workshop's gonna look like. Autumn, you mentioned developers have concerns. Are they like legitimate environmental concerns where they're saying, oh, we think, that we can build within 50 feet of the buffer. I want to see them provide material to me showing that that's okay, to give you the alternative. So I think we need to be showing materials and talking about why you made these recommendations and why I'm supporting them, and that's why. I have no idea what to expect from developers. Maybe there is science out there telling us that we can build up right against the marsh, but I have to see it. I want to be moved next month. The reason people make money to live in Scarborough is because of resources, and I'm not gonna sit here and fight over it just for personal property rights. I don't know. I need some real substantial information behind it. I have a different opinion about how the workshop might go.
Yeah, that's
No,
fine.
I don't know what their concerns are. I haven't been presented with like, they have legitimate legal concerns or environmental concerns. They think our recommendations are environmentally wrong. I've not heard that. I think we just need to kind of more educate as to why we made these recommendations. So then we can say, okay, now developers come back and educate me and change my mind as to why we should not make these changes. I don't know the science and the information behind it, but I did not watch the workshop, but I know there's just a lot of general, like, you don't like this.
Well, I think some of it has to do, it's not necessarily a different science. It's more about, it is about property rights. It's about decrease in valuation of property. It's zeroing out a piece of property that you perhaps paid $1 million for because of the wetlands.
Yeah.
The way it's written now, if I have wetlands on my property, but you're within a certain distance, you have to mitigate for my property, right? So there's things like that, but I think presented some issues with just development. There's also some conflicting, we have growth areas, and I wish we could flip our town, but we can't. Our growth areas are all over on this side of the marsh, and so that's sort of conflicting. We have our highest density zoning, and so those properties have been purchased or planned for certain things, and then to put this on them that's the discussion really. I think that's the points that it's kind of trying to figure out how we can achieve the environmental goals and still maintain the development rights or figure out a balance. That's what I think the whole purpose. I don't think you're gonna get conflicting science. I think you're gonna get things like that. That's what I would suspect. And so to that, there may be, that's why I don't think we're gonna come to a kumbaya hugging moment at the end.
I don't think, and that's where I feel
Yeah.
like, I feel that ordinance it's gonna come down to ordinance.
Yeah.
Where I'm not willing to compromise on the recommendations we made, so someone's going to have to slash it somewhere else. That's kind of how I feel personally. I think you guys have done a lot of work, and if you can get the information behind all the recommendations that you're giving, I think that will help. And everyone can decide how they want to proceed.
I will say too, I think Jamie sent them out. There are some low impact development standards that are underway for the MS4 communities. And now first blush, those look potentially good. We have a lot of questions about the specifics behind them.
Like, I recall, that's what I was gonna say, I recall this is happening in tandem.
Right.
Um,
And then there's also the land bond to consider. So you don't want to put yourself in a bad spot. It says, oh, we need this great land bond for open space, but we're also requiring it without purchasing it. It's sort of conflicting. So just things to consider in timing and all that.
I don't understand that last comment.
So if you have a land bond that says, you need $6 million to go buy open space, but you're creating an ordinance that automatically gets you open space, what do you need the land bond for?
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
I have an easy answer
it's
to
just-
that.
yeah.
I mean, 30 by 30 is what our town has adopted, and we have to work really hard to get there. So,
Right.
it's gonna be a combination of all of these things that actually,
These are just all of the things that will come up. I'm just kind of
yeah.
trying to tell you all the different.
Yeah, and that's why I
topics
want to be
right?
prepared for kind of what they're coming back with, where, you know.
So, I mean, if they're gonna have engineering experts and wetland experts there to question things, we don't have that on our side. I mean, we have a bunch of volunteers,
Mhm.
and unless town staff also are some experts on that, will we have somebody that we can bring in? I feel like it's almost unfair if we're gonna be having engineers and wetland experts for consultants and developers questioning things. Without having, I mean, I'm a geologist,
Yeah,
I'm not a wetland scientist.
right.
I'm a resource economist, not a, you know.
I mean, you know,
And we're doing this in our spare time.
and
Sure.
And my understanding, I mean, I could be wrong on this, but my understanding when we were pulling this together was. We go for aggressive standards. Knowing we might settle on something else,
Mhm.
that was always part of the discussion. I don't know why it's, I mean, it's not a yay or nay completely, there is a middle ground. That can be achieved through all this. And that's part of the process, and at least my understanding, or at least the way I'm thinking about it is. Here's what, in a perfect world, what we would try to achieve. Whether or not we're gonna achieve that, I don't know, but. You know, there is middle ground there, it's, you know, not all the wetland, like, one of the things we talked about was redevelopment, so. Parcel that's already there, that's fully developed, right now, the way it's written is, this will not allow that parcel to be developed. Well, there's middle ground that could be looked at, you know, so I think there's. At least I am prepared to give and take. I don't know if that's the way we're looking at this as a commission or not, but. I mean, I don't know how the town feels about that, these are town standards that we're trying to pass.
I mean, I feel like the recommendations came out of here, you guys recommend what you think is best for the resources and what we should do to maximize protection.
It is, but I guess
If
where I'm,
experts and the ordinance committee want to, with zero knowledge, strike that and do it, that's up to them. I'm saying we, as a commission, have discussed this, we've done our research. This is why we're making these recommendations. And I ultimately think it will come up to counselors going, I believe in personal property rights, and I personally believe in protecting our resources for the rest of the life. I think it's gonna come down to that personally.
I think to Pete's point, if we did find some areas to compromise
Right.
on, you have better. This is a decision, do you want all or nothing or somewhere in between, you know? And so, I mean, I think what we've been told as staff is, okay, go do this again, meet again, and see if you can come up with anything where everybody's not up in arms from both sides, from the developer side of the community versus, it's not us against them, right? And so it's see if there's any opportunity. So that's what I see the purpose of the meeting is to see if there is opportunity for that. Like Pete's just said this, and maybe an engineer over here says, okay, well, you have 75. 75 is really difficult, but maybe it's this number or something like that. That's what potentially could come out of the meeting. And then we report out to ordinance committee. They could still, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how it's gonna go.
I'd rather get something than nothing.
But it's something than nothing.
I mean, the whole point was improving our
Yeah,
protections for
right.
our resources.
Yeah.
So if we go through this whole process, and don't do that, the process in my mind is failed.
Right. And I guess if it gets to council and it gets totally killed because we couldn't move it at all, then it will have been a total loss. So I'm just looking for you all, like, I'm just gonna have these people talk and these people talk and
Yeah,
see if we can find.
if we can find some middle ground with
common
developers,
middle
that a lot more weight to council, in my opinion. Developers and Conservation Commission have discussed and they started at different ends, but they've come to some agreement, at least in some areas. and
Right.
At least some of those areas might have
So we
a chance
just,
of making it
we
in.
just did that with our new impact fees. We have really high, 2 new projects that have really high impact fees and we came in and then, you know, there's a compromise. It's a negotiation, but it's finding that sweet spot where we get what this commission wants, but it's still acceptable, and so there's not a lot of, it's not a Gorham connector. It's moving along.
And
Angela's.
yeah, and Jean Marie's actually had her hand up for a little while, so I'm gonna make the executive decision to go to Jean Marie first.
I appreciate that. Thank you. No, just real quickly, as you guys may or may not know, I'm chair of ordinance, so we do have this penciled in for our ordinance meeting in September. I'm just gonna talk politically here because that's my specialty. I absolutely agree that we should be looking at, you know, what some of these standards are and whatever. My caution is the timing right? I know when people like, well, we're already too late, we gotta do whatever. Okay, that's fine, but the reality is pick your battles. If you want the conservation bond to pass, then everybody needs to be focused on it, working towards that. Let's get this passed before we go off on another direction, because these two issues may get conflated. I know how some people think, and it may do some damage to getting the bond passed. That's just how I feel. Having lived in this town for 37 years and been on the council for 10 years. I do agree with Peter that, you know, okay, so you put out some ideals and let's see what we can work towards. That makes sense. Of course, I come at it, then I've got another third hat that I wear, which is real estate broker. And of course, private property rights are huge in my field. So it's like, why would we go further than what the state and the feds already have established? And does it make sense for one community to do that? Or should we be working with other communities to get the legislature to do more? But anyway, I'm diverging there, but I just want to put the caution flag out. Don't let this get conflated with your land bond, because I think the land bond is going to be a bit of, it's going to be a hard sell this year potentially. And I hate to see anything get in the way of that. So thank you for letting me talk. I appreciate it.
Angela's had her hand up too. Angela, you want to?
I guess not to keep it going then, because I think Jimmy kind of wrapped it up, but if we are talking about kind of specifics for the roundtable, I guess to go back to how do we approach it? I will say when we met with the developers, I think the big thing that they want to know is what's prompting this, why now? And I will say what I think resonated with them the most, and maybe Autumn will think differently, but what I heard was when I started giving examples of like, here's why we're doing it now. I mean, we talked about the comp plan and all the surveys and everybody, like, this is what the community wants. However, when I started talking about real life construction sites, here are the issues we're having with development coming in close to the resources and what we're seeing on these sites. I think kind of more of that real life, here's what happens when you have no buffer and what we're seeing on the site. Whereas if we had a buffer, and I feel like the developers could get to a buffer because they understand, like, they don't want to be destroying wetlands, because for them, it's also after the fact permitting and fines and all of that. I think to try to put it, kind of spin it as what is the problem and kind of saying, it speaks back to what Karen was saying about, I think, the science behind it, but also the real life, this is what we're seeing and what's happening. And it's at no fault. I think they wanted to say, well, you're just talking about bad actors out there, right? That there's a bad developer or a bad contractor, but it's not. It's when we are now working on these sites that are so much more complicated because they're all the good land's gone, right? So they're working up against all of these resources that it's really no fault to the contractors. They're just put in this situation, right, to develop every square inch. So I think if we kind of come at it as, I think you're gonna hear that. Why are we doing this? What's the problem? I think we need to kind of define that problem for them a little bit, and I think they're receptive to hearing that. Or I think I heard they were during that meeting. I don't know if Counselor Katarina or Autumn has a different opinion, but I think they actually listened to that.
Yeah, no, I think that would be important. I think we give them the example of, right now, we have developments that they're gonna put a fence or some sort of thing right on the resource. And Angela's always like, well, how are you gonna build it from above? You're gonna hang over, because you're gonna be in the resource to build this if it's on the line. So that's sort of what prompted this. We need some basic setbacks.
So may I just jump for a second? I think it'd be really important, and maybe this is part of the exercise for that workshop, is we look at a couple of case studies where there have been issues with not being able to establish a buffer or something like that.
Okay.
And how that might have turned out differently if there was something like that. Because, I mean, that's exactly the issue we're looking at, and if they are more receptive to looking at real life case studies, then maybe that's something to look at.
Jean Marie have her hand up again, or? Same
Yeah.
hand.
Jean Marie, is that a new hand or an old hand?
No.
Okay. Go
Oh.
ahead.
Oh, you can hear me. Oh, I'm never sure when I'm muted or not. I better be careful. No. Yeah, I know my intent in that meeting when we were talking was, rather than just one, I was seeing it as a process of being, 2 or 3 meetings, where people talk through, they bring up things, come back with information, an educational process rather than a one-day workshop, so to speak, where both sides can understand each other better. I think you get better results, but again, that's my opinion, and my experience in working with developers on both sides, either representing on a real estate side or being, the person on the political side or representing constituents. So that's where I was thinking it with the meeting. So I was glad to see we were having a meeting, but personally, I'd like to see more, because anything done well is not rushed through. Let's do it right. And that's it. Thank you. My husband's gonna kill me because we have company and I'm supposed to be having. So, anyway.
Any other thoughts before we move on to the land bond?
Just a quick comment, I guess. I guess just when I watched the recording, I couldn't tell how much of it was just a lack of context for them of like, again, where the values came from. So I don't know how easy it would be to do like, here's the recommendation, here's the state minimum, federal minimum, just to like almost visually walk through, if that's possible. Maybe there isn't a standard, but I wasn't totally sure if that, like, if just any value would have been upsetting, or if it was a specific value and they didn't know where it came from. So I don't know if we could point to like, what is the bare minimum we need to do? And here's our aspirational one. Again, just part of the education piece, just to walk through it. And maybe that's easier said than done. I don't know.
If you show them the bare minimum, then
That's what they're gonna want, yeah.
Yes, sure, sure. But I mean, like, if they're thinking that's, I'm assuming they're aware of the bare. Do you know what I mean? Like, if they're, I just mean like, this is the absolute. If you're
I was gonna say the
recommending
bare minimum is probably what the state has
Right.
been able to pass, because that's what our legislative body is able to agree on.
Right.
So whether that's what's best for the resource or not, that's what they could agree on.
And that's our sell. May I ask one more follow-up? Do we have these new draft LID standards in a way that can be distilled to look in comparison with what has been proposed?
So Autumn and I have looked at that a little bit in terms of the setbacks and things like that. The biggest is that we at least have a tiered system or a tiered structure for wetlands. And the way it's written currently, and it will probably change because that's a preliminary draft, is it's 250 feet from all wetlands, no matter the size.
Okay, but I think it's important to have.
Yeah.
apples to apples comparison of what we have, what we're proposing, and possibly these LID standards. And maybe that will cause the group to say, hey, you know what, let's wait for the LID standards to come and then do something, but I think, we've talked about this for a long time, and we have our reasons for wanting to make sure that the marsh and its tributaries are as healthy as possible, and the fact that we have a very unique and significant resource in the Scarborough Marsh that most towns don't have. But it might be helpful to have those draft standards at least accessible in a format that's similar to the way our current thing is laid out, to just see the comparison.
Just as an aside, I don't think we mentioned it tonight. The representatives from the commission that will be at that meeting are Pete and Randy, and Karen will also be there.
When is that meeting?
It is going to be August 28th.
The night of our regular meeting. So,
Which is apparently canceled.
That was the discussion, was that we were gonna do that in,
Okay.
in lieu of the August meeting.
Will that be recorded?
We need to figure that out. We will probably try to record it. I don't think that we will like live stream it and all of that stuff.
you hope for- close.
So moving on to my focus, the land bond, I wanted to give you an update. So last Wednesday, there was a town council workshop, which included the public safety's request for roughly $1 million for body cameras, the $1 million for the fire truck, and $6 million for the land bond. All three of those items passed unanimously at first reading. I think that it's fair to say most of the public comment was supportive. I know there were folks who provided public comment in person at the council meeting, and there were a lot of letters in support that were also provided. The next step will be the public hearing on August 21st. And is that just during regular council meeting?
Correct.
Yes.
It's just a public hearing,
It's just the
So
public
it's just-
hearing, no votes,
no
just,
discussion,
Yep.
just come and make a comment.
I do think it's important again for folks to show up and be heard, because there was some discussion about lowering the amount. Or adding some spending requirements, I think are the two pieces that came up. When Don wants to do the third, a third.
That's kind of.
Oh, I know, I'm just saying that's what he said.
I don't know how you could implement something like that.
You can. And I will say that the PCLB evaluation form does give points to projects that are bringing matching funds. So I think that it's essentially already in the evaluation process. I don't think prescribing an amount makes sense based on what opportunities come up in the future. Just saying
Now that I
that.
know that, I can counter him with that, bring that up again.
Yeah.
And I just, that's not something that's prevalent, but now that you're saying that, that's one of the point systems in the evaluation.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it's part of the evaluation system.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think Andrew, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the 2019 bond, Scarborough Land Trust has leveraged, 35% town funds and 65% matching funds. So I don't think it's a problem that needs to be addressed. It already has had wonderful success with leverage and matching. So public hearing on August 21st, and then second reading, which will be the final vote for the November ballot, is in September. I had it. Where does it go?
Probably the first Wednesday in September.
I want to say is it the 4th?
It's either the first or the third.
September 4th.
Yeah,
Oh.
September 4th.
September 4th, not the 4th. but
No,
Wednesday.
sorry.
No, you're right.
September 4th will be second reading, and there's a possibility there could be public hearing and the vote. But
Well, there will be public comment.
There'll be
also
public
on top of
comment,
public
yeah.
comment.
but that'll be the real the last opportunity. And right now, the ballot language is the same as it's always been in the previous four bonds. So there's been no discussion about changing the purposes or the language.
So what role should the commission have in this? Has there been any discussion about that, or this commission can discuss? Like, what would be helpful for the PCLB in this?
I think
process?
public education is just really, really important. What the land bond does, how it works. I think that we've heard tonight that it could be some conflating between environmental standards and the land bond and the open space plan. And I think generally there is some confusion. And my understanding is that there's going to be a communications plan at some point.
Yeah, so we're gonna do that, and I think that's where the education stuff comes in. I probably will be coming back to you guys. Or JB will also, because we do have some characters like communication information like that. But I mean, I think generally the council supports it. I think there was a general couple concerns about the public not supporting 6 million, just because of like the environment right now politically. And so I don't think we have a problem with the council over getting on the ballot. I have a minor concern that maybe someone might try to lower it. But I think, we got so many emails, like 20+ emails in support. Thank you guys for doing that. Maybe 2 emails in opposition. And so I think you have the council support. I think they have the same concerns that we all do of like, is 6 million too much? Is this a bad time? Like, are we concerned? They say, can we make it less? I'm like, I don't think it matters. Either people support this cause or they don't. I said that before. But I think the education behind it is where you guys come in the most.
And I would say that it seems that the concern is about it passing, not about the need. Everyone understands that the need is greater than 6 million, but I think the concern is about passage.
Well, and I think making the case too, that $6 million isn't going to impact your taxes today. Like, that's going to be spread over a multi-year period. So it's not like building a school or another facility that will have an immediate impact on property tax.
Question and an idea, I guess. Question is, if theoretically it didn't pass this November, could we put it on the ballot next year? It doesn't like exclude it from the ballot. It just obviously delays us chances to buy land if we need to.
Right,
Right.
and it's been shown that it's more successful when it's voted on in conjunction with a presidential election.
Higher voter turnout.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We know that residents and voters support conservation, so the more that are able or to vote,
Or likely to
Yeah.
vote.
are
It's the best
likely to
time to do
vote,
it.
it's the best time to do it.
And then I was just thinking, could we, as a commission, pen a letter or an article to ask to be published like in the Scarborough Leader to help spread out the word in, a different form, like rather just a bulletin or something?
Yeah, I would say a letter to the editor from the commission, because we have been limited, or the leaders kind of changed how much space they have for town directed news. But they're still including letters to the editor. So, whether they choose to print it or not, but it's definitely a good option.
They've added more ads I've seen.
Yeah.
One follow-up question on that. When was the last one? How much was it for?
2.5 in 2019.
Okay. Do we have a comparison of how much property values have gone up since 2019 to show that the 6 million?
214%.
Okay, so that right there to me is one of the most important things we can stress. It's not an exorbitant ask because of the value, the rise in the value of property. So.
Oh, yeah,
That's
I
a very
mean-
strong component of the message that needs to be put out there in terms of the land.
Yep, so purchase price increased 214%, land bond authorization increased 240%, meaning the 2.5 million in 2019 with the buying power. Today would be, that's the comparison. that I'm
Okay,
making.
perfect. Great.
Is there a way to get the number for maybe average taxpayer or per $100,000 of money? If it went all 6 million, how much would that impact your taxes? Is there a way to get a number that?
I think that
It's like
North
$3.
Kidlow
Who cares?
could run that number for us. I had been hesitant to ask about that until we had a affirmative vote on the amount, because I didn't want to have multiple household impacts out there, like, oh, well, you know, if it's 6 million, if it's 5 million, if it's 3 million, and you get all those numbers out there, and like, I heard it was gonna be $3 a year for, you know, you just.
Right,
But it's at least in the plan to
Yes.
do that calculation
Yes.
once the number is set.
Yeah.
And Kathleen has her hand up.
I just wanted to say that, part of what Marla and I have been thinking about is like ways to communicate this out to the town. So, we can work on something for the town newsletter. And also Allison said that she would love to have social media content. So for the town Instagram, so if there are particular, if you have particular ideas about things that we could craft, I personally feel like one of the big things we do need to get out is that piece that Jamie said about, this isn't gonna hit you all at once, it's like we have this money, it's in reserve and these are the priorities around conservation, types of land, so I think it's just really thinking through, like, how do we create a really good educational campaign so that people can see why this is necessary.
I think we have some good images from the photo contest, that this is the second year. So really focusing on the benefits. I know we worry about the costs and we worry about how voters will receive it, but I do think we need to remind them of the wonderful things that these dollars do purchase, and that it's not a perfect analogy, but this line of credit means that as a town, we are able to take advantage of opportunities as they present themselves. And without this line of credit, some of the marquee properties and places that make Scarborough so special could be lost. It's really that black and white.
I was just thinking that I think you could also make the case if historically we receive, let's say, double the amount matching funds. So we're saying 6 million, but we're gonna get 12 million. That's gonna match that.
Probably 18 million is more.
Okay, maybe it's 18, but so if we have that historical number and can sort of somewhat extrapolate, I mean.
So
That's
using the
huge.
most recent 6 years, the potential leverage of town funds would be 23 million.
23 million.
Oh, we have on the math, don't you?
Yeah, that's
We have it.
Yeah, so
That's-
that $6 million investment will,
huge.
It's
will be-
huge.
We have a council corner live in August. I would really love it if some of you came. It would be great to have some people in the audience who maybe can answer questions that I'm not thoroughly able to. It's specifically on the land bond. And so it'll be helpful if we have people there. I mean, maybe, I don't know who's gonna show up, what the conversation will bring, but if we have people there in support of it, I think that'll be helpful.
Well, I'm really interested with the community part. So it sounds like from the meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow. That there will be some community priorities that do rise up, and I think we should also make sure that we're communicating around those priorities. Not like in 2000, a survey said, or these
yeah,
are.
it'll definitely tell us, we'll have some information, some preliminary information after tomorrow about which resource categories or what things, the Scarborough community think are important to conserve. So habitat or clean land that will
Water.
protect water,
Yeah.
right? Environmental hazards, agriculture, things like that. So we'll have some of that information that can be shared for both of those.
So I feel like we're already in tandem with the 1,700 acres, it's reinforcing. There is a gap. We have a sense for the magnitude of that gap. What do we need to close that gap for the 30 by 30 goal? What are the priorities?
And then also acknowledging that conservation doesn't end after 2030.
No.
Once we hit that goal, we're not done. We're just, going to continue.
60 by 60.
Yeah. That ship has sailed.
Yes.
So Autumn, you did have some thoughts on planning board?
Oh, yes, I was just gonna mention, we have, 70 Haggis, it's a site plan amendment, 70 Haggis already exists, it's an industrial building on Haggis right across from the new Market Street. They're just doing an expansion, requesting some turning movements, so I just wanted to tell you what those were. And then we have, Dirigo site plan. It is the existing building with the blue metal roof on Payne Road and Gorham at the corner. It's the Roundwood subdivision. They're just doing they're going to turn it into a bank. And some
We need
retail.
more of
I know.
Apparently.
I've never seen so many banks.
banks and hotels in Scarborough.
But I know, it's gonna be my.
You gotta make sure you
my
can get your
budget
money.
anyway. So that was just an amended site plan. They're updating some new things. But then we have a public hearing on cannabis buffering going forward. That's including 1,000-foot buffer for residential properties. for
That Past
cultivation.
first reading.
Just first reading at council, then
Yeah.
it goes to planning board for a public hearing, then it goes back to council for a public hearing and second reading. And then we have, chapter 405B is off my site plan ordinance, and it's the final revisions for architecture and site layout. That's one planning board. So yeah, pre-public hearing, and there's a little sign change that has to happen. To make those commercial design standards work, but planning board should be pretty easy next time. I'm honest.
Sweet.
Yeah, be my first one without Eric, so lucky me.
But there's not a lot of.
No.
There's nothing in terms of developments.
Oh, Dirigo and.
Oh, right, but those are.
In the
right,
Haggis,
minor.
and then I think Intermen's gonna come back
Oh,
with some changes, but
yeah.
they've already been involved in them.
Cool, good.
I only know about the cannabis because it's usually ahead of the land bond.
Yeah,
It's ahead of everything. It's first
Yeah.
up on everything.
So updates. Unless there's any questions on planning board. Marla or Kathleen, anything on the promoting citizen stewardship?
Well, I'm just gonna ask people to hopefully attend this talk. The importance of salt marshes. Dr. Beverly Johnson, who is an earth and climate sciences professor at Bates College, she's coming on August 6th. I know this is a really busy time, but this is going to be a really great talk. And she is somebody who is going to do a deep dive into the science of salt marshes. We do have the largest salt marsh ecosystem in the state of Maine. So it's going to be, I guarantee you will learn new things you've never heard before. So that is August 6th at 6:30 p.m. And we invited her. So we're actually co-hosting this with Maine Audubon and Scarborough Land Trust and the Scarborough Public Library. And we're going to be doing a tour of the marsh for Professor Johnson. And it should be a great night to meet with other concerned citizens. So hopefully we can all make it and hopefully spread the word. So, and I'll send out some reminders too about it. I know this is a very busy time. We have a lot of events going on.
There sure is. And I'll make sure that there are some of those flyers at the workshop tomorrow night.
Oh, yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Make a note.
Thank you. Yes, I've been trying to put them up all around town. So, yes, please help spread the word.
I would just tag on that I actually went to Bates College. I graduated in 2010. I didn't ever have Professor Johnson, but some of my friends had her as their advisor, and she was very popular. She's an excellent speaker. I've seen her speak before at talks at Bates. And
Oh,
she's-
great.
It's,
Well, thank you.
yeah,
Thank
so
you
it's
for saying that.
actually a great speaker to have. So,
I think it's gonna be really phenomenal, so I mean, she's really an expert and she's gonna talk about blue carbon, which is really actually a new concept for me, but salt marshes and wetlands in general can actually be greater carbon sinks than even forests. So this is really some cutting edge science. You know, she works with students all the time, and so she's like in there doing this work. So it's a great talk. So we'll have a good turnout.
I know Bev and have worked with her for a number of years on marshes. She's very good.
Okay. So, yeah, and she's one of the founders of the Maine Blue Carbon Network. So we'll hear about that as well. And we are like looking at some other, education outreach ideas with Allison, so. And I'll see, that's all for now, unless, Kathleen has anything else to add. Okay.
Karen, anything else from town council?
No, I mean, so we have the open space workshop tomorrow. As I mentioned, we have the council corner live. I don't know when it is. I think it's August 7th. I was looking in my email and
I was gonna say, is it on the
I
website yet?
think it's not, but I believe it's on, it is, because we have a special council meeting on the 7th and then we're after, I believe. So that's the 7th. As we discussed tonight, we have the developer workshop forum at the end of August. I guess I just want to be, and I hope that we're all prepared with our data to support the recommendations that we have. And then the only other thing that I wanted to mention is that we have 3 openings on town council come November, and it's a pretty lonely business by myself. And I don't know if you guys, like really, this is where the impact happens. So like when you have environmental standards, depending on who you have on council, we had Jean Marie who wants to go through a process. I feel like maybe I personally think the process should be a little bit more abridged. It all depends on who you have on council and what their priorities are. So I just put it out there. Oh, it's a big commitment. You can also choose to just work on one thing. I've only chose to work on a couple subjects and I can't do it all. But if you can think of someone, if you yourself want to step up, get involved, like this is really where it happens. And just like any election with 3 open spots, like we could have a totally different council next year and none of this could happen. I don't see that happening. But also sometimes people step up with different alternative sort of methods and ideas. I just wanted to mention that as well, because it's a little nerve wracking as a counselor to wonder what those 3 new seats are gonna look like.
Sustainability, Jamie?
Yeah, I would like to replace that with just some other upcoming dates because
There's a lot.
there's a lot. So I want to put a plug in also for the public meeting for the vulnerability assessment. So that's happening on August 12th in this room from 6 to 8. So that will be kind of the public introduction to how the vulnerability assessment is working. And provide an opportunity to ask questions and provide feedback and things like that. It's been a very interesting process so far. I'm really glad that we have experts that are supporting this because the information that they're pulling together and saying, you know, projecting out 100 years, and these are the sea level rise projections, and based on that, these are the roads that are going to be likely flooded. These are the pump stations that are going to be vulnerable and things like that. It's going to be a lot of information and it's going to be, I think, a hard product for Scarborough residents to look at because
For the developers forum. Like, you don't want to look back, you're gonna be underwater.
I mean, yeah, there's that. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting process. So I hope that we have a good turnout for that. Related to that, which I failed to put on the agenda, is on September 22nd, Emerson is organizing what? I'm so awful with my months. August 22nd, Emerson is organizing a coastal meetup, which is basically training community members as citizen scientists to go out and help document tides and flooding. So you can document normal tides, you can document extreme high tides, things like that. It's a program that's being done by the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, and they're just trying to compile information over a long period of time to see how things are changing. And so it'll basically be providing an introduction to how you collect and submit the data. We'll be at the Pine Point parking lot at 2 p.m. on August 22nd. That is one of the highest tides of the month in August. Not the highest, but one of the highest. I think the highest is at 2 a.m. And so no one wants to be hanging out with us at 2 a.m. on the Eastern Trail. So we'll be doing that event as well, teaching people how to collect and submit data.
Is that a Bird Park or the co-op?
It's at the it's actually at the Eastern Trail parking lot
Oh,
on Pine Point Road.
I can send out
Yeah.
all the details.
Yes.
Son of my daughter tomorrow.
Yeah, totally. So information about that, will be going out in the upcoming e-newsletters. There's information on the town website and things like that. And then just an item of interest related to the vulnerability assessment. We also have neighborhood meetings scheduled, at Higgins Beach and at Pine Point for the vulnerability assessment. Those are both happening in September. And then don't forget about Sustainable Scarborough Day on October 6th.
I can't even think of it October right now.
Oh, I am. I'm thinking about it.
Our whole jobs just kind of wish our lives away. Like our whiteboards are scheduled, you know, so far in advance.
Mhm.
It's crazy.
So that's what's going on. Everybody come tomorrow.
And our next meeting is September 25th.
Yes, so we'll have the roundtable, August 28th for the environmental standards, and then we will meet in September. As a full body.
And then we're gonna set up an additional meeting with you and Randy and Karen.
Yes, before,
Staff to sort of
before.
brainstorm.
Yes, to work on some strategy and discussion materials that we want to prepare. Yes, thank you for giving that. All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Goodbye. Second.
All right.